Welcome to the Life's Hard, Succeed Anyway podcast, where you will hear transformational stories, positive encouragement, and practical strategies to help you grow your mindset, reach your potential, live your dreams, and experience a purpose-driven, impact-filled life. Here's your host, Alan Blaine.
All right, this is Alan Blaine, and I'm super thrilled to get to interview our special guest today, Nick Hutchison. Let me tell you just a little bit about Nick before we get going. Nick Hutchison is the visionary force behind BookThinkers, a thriving seven-figure marketing agency bridging authors and readers. In just over 7 years, he has cultivated a platform reaching over 1 million people monthly and hosts the top 2% global podcast, BookThinkers, life-changing books featuring interviews with renowned authors like Grant Cardone and Lewis Howes, just to name a few. Nick's platform and services have empowered countless authors to reach millions of readers, driving substantial revenue growth. His services encompass video production, podcast booking, and social media brand building. With a mission to inspire readers to take action, Nick authored Rise of the Reader, delving into mastering reading habits and applying newfound knowledge to unlock potential. Nick, welcome to the Life's Hard, Succeed Anyway podcast. Are you ready for this?
I am ready for this. Can I actually ask you the first question today?
Hey, fire away, man. Let's have some fun.
I love it. Well, listen, we're recording this at the beginning of 2024, and I love asking this question when I meet amazing people like you. What was the best book that you read last year in 2023?
Ooh, now that is a good one. You know what? The first one that came to mind, and I don't know if I had more time to think on it, if I would stick with this answer, but You Are the Brand by my friend Mike Kim. I really enjoyed that book.
I have not read that book. What was your favorite takeaway?
Just the simplicity of trying to get clear on what is one's brand. I thought he did a super excellent job of just really distilling it down, because that was something that I was really wrestling with last year and trying to just get clarity around that. And so I think that's why that book is the first one that came to mind. I mean, the other one I was wrestling with answering was The Gap and the Gain with Dan Sullivan. But yeah, I'm going to go with You Are the Brand.
Yeah, Dan Sullivan and Dr. Benjamin Hardy write amazing books. 10X is Easier Than 2X was in my top couple of reads last year. And I even reread that book again at the beginning of this year. But I'm happy that you shared a book that I have not read yet. So it'll be a book that I'll check out and I'll add to my list.
Absolutely. Definitely check it out. It's worth the read. So I've given our listeners just a brief overview of who Nick Hutchison is, but Nick, why don't you just kind of take us back and in Cliff Notes version, kind of tell us your story and how you got to be where you are today.
Well, what might surprise anybody that could see the 1,000 books behind me is that when I was growing up, I was not much of a reader. In fact, that's an understatement. You could not pay me to read a book or do my homework. I wasn't a great student. I was more of the athlete, not really much of the academic, right? So I played football, and when I was a senior in high school, we got to play in Gillette Stadium on live TV in the Super Bowl, and I was captain of the wrestling team, and that was my life. I loved athletics and competition. I did not love my schoolwork. And that attitude, my anti-reading attitude, continued with me through most of my college experience as well. But everything changed for me when I took an internship going into my senior year of college at a local software company, because I was commuting about an hour each way, 5 days a week. So I was spending about 10 hours a week in the car. And I was just like anybody else when they're 20 years old, listening to music, listening to the radio station, having a lot of fun, singing at the top of my lungs. And everything changed for me when my boss at the time, Kyle, he said, listen, man, you're commuting so much, but listening to the same song for the 300th time, it's not going to change your life, man. But the right podcast might. So I actually started with podcasting. I was somebody who spent a lot of time in the car and had a lot of opportunity to learn, and I wanted to be successful. So he introduced me to a few shows where a host would interview a series of successful guests, and those guests would talk about what made them successful. And very quickly, because I was in the car again so much, I realized a lot of these people were giving at least some credit for their success to the books that they were reading. And I heard the same book titles over and over and over and over again. So one day I just realized, man, if I want to live under my potential, I should keep this attitude that reading books is not cool. But if I want to live up to my potential, I have to go see what all of this magic is about. Like, why are these books changing lives? And so I took a lunch break one day at this internship. I went to my local Barnes and Noble. I grabbed about 10 books, which was a lot of money for a broke college student to spend.
Right.
I bought about 10 books, and the rest is history. I've been reading anywhere between 50 to 100 business or personal development style books a year ever since. And like you highlighted in the intro, I built an agency where I help authors promote and market their books. And I built a social media series of communities where I share the books I'm reading and my favorite takeaways from them. And the through line, and I'll wrap up my intro by saying the through line is that the right book at the right time can change somebody's life permanently. And I think that's just so amazing.
So amazing. Well, how many years ago was that, Nick? I mean, I know you're not a super old guy, at least you don't look like it, but
I am 30 years young. But what I like to say, so it was about 10 years ago that I started my reading journey.
Yep.
I like to say that if you include all of the books behind me, though, which condense decades of somebody else's greatest life lessons and experiences into days, I'm thousands of years old.
Oh, yeah. Thousands of years of knowledge.
Thousands of years of knowledge.
That is cool, isn't it?
Yes.
So I asked that question because you said 50, if I heard you right, you said 50 to 100 books a year. And I wanted to know over what time span. So roughly 10 years.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
So you've consumed 10 times 100 to, you've consumed what, 500 to 1,000 books in the last 10 years, you think?
Yes. I've consumed at a minimum 500 unique titles. Yeah. And so many of the books I've read 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times. And so, I would say about 5% of the books have created 95% of the change for me. So I probably have a top 25-ish if I had to boil them down. So yeah, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of books.
So I got to ask, are you one of these guys that, you're consuming a lot, so I don't know how much time you spend per day or per week reading. Maybe that's a follow-up question you could incorporate in there. Do you have a block of time? How do you fit in? How does your reading work? That'll be a secondary question for you. But are you one of these guys that just blows through it and then, unless there's reason to, moves on to the next? Or are you there and are you using hard copies? I guess it's a multifaceted question here. Is it ebooks? Is it audio? Is it the actual hard copy of the book? And my main question is, are you highlighting? Are you studying the book? Or are you just consuming the book? Because I know which way I go, and I know everyone's a little different. I'm just curious how you read them.
I have so many answers to these questions, and we could spend a lot of time here because this is my favorite subject on the planet. To address a couple of questions right off the bat, in which format do I consume information? I prefer a physical paper book. And the reason that I prefer reading a physical paper book is that science shows us that's the best way to retain and implement information. Around 80% of the inputs to our brain are visual. So by default, if you're listening just to an audiobook, which I still do, I probably listen to about 20 or 30 audiobooks a year, you're at a disadvantage because not only are you not leveraging the visual input, which is the strongest way to build a relationship to information, but you're probably multitasking compared to monotasking. So when somebody listens to an audiobook, they're driving, they're at the gym, they're doing chores around the house, they're doing admin work for their office job, they're multitasking, and they're not leveraging the visual input. Whereas with a physical paper book, you're able to develop sort of a laser-like focus because you're focusing on one thing at the expense of everything else. And you're leveraging the visual input. So I love paper. And I also love paper, to address another question, because I definitely highlight and take notes. Now, the amount of information that I highlight and take notes on has gone down over time as I've become a little bit more intentional with the books that I'm reading. And we could talk about my reading process in a minute, but to address a couple of other questions, I think that when somebody is first starting in the world of personal development, my recommendation would be to consume as many books as possible, as fast as possible. I think that when you're first starting out, it's important to leverage quantity over quality, because you don't know what's out there. You don't know what's going to resonate with you. You're not really sure what this world of personal development actually means. You don't know what writing styles you enjoy. You don't know what you want to do with the rest of your life. And so just absorb all of it, all the classics, all the big names, Napoleon Hill and Dale Carnegie and Brian Tracy and everything. But as you age and as you mature in business, I think that your focus starts to shift a little bit more to the other side of the spectrum where quality and emotional connection matters a lot more than quantity. And so when I read a book, I'm looking to A, solve a problem, or B, build a skill. Those are the two main buckets for me these days. And so I would say today I'm a little bit more focused on studying and implementing the information than I was about 10 years ago. There's no right or wrong answer, but I do think that if you read an amazing book and fail to take action and change your behavior, it's closer to a form of entertainment than it is actual education.
Right.
So a lot of people, they say 52 books a year. That's what the average CEO reads. That's a vanity metric. It doesn't really matter because the slow, nuanced experience of studying and implementing one book is better than the fast, superficial experience of 52 or 100. And the last thing I'll say to kind of wrap up my monologue here is that I read professionally. I built a business out of reading and implementing personal development books. So I do have a little bit more time slotted than I think the average person, has available. But there is a simple solution to this, which is that in 15 minutes of reading twice a day, you can read about 24 books a year. And the math, just real quick, is that a lot of people tell me, they'll say, "Hey, Nick, I don't have time to read." And I'll say, "Really? What if I paid you $10,000 to read a book by the end of the month? Do you think you could do it?" And they're like, "Oh, yeah, of course I could." And so they've fallen into my trap. The question is not, do you have time to read? But it's, do you value reading over everything else you're currently spending your time on? Because if you did, you would find the time to read. Finding time is tough, though, because we're all spending the same 24 hours every day. So instead of trying to find time to read, I recommend replacing 15 minutes of your morning social media scrolling and just the first 15 minutes of your Netflix in the evening with reading a great book. In 30 minutes, the average person who's just starting out could read about 20 pages. You do that 5 days a week, that's 100 pages a week. It's 400 pages a month. And because these books are about 200 pages on average these days, they're getting shorter and shorter.
Yeah.
You can read 2 books a month, 24 books a year, just by replacing a little bit in, scrolling in the morning and a little bit of Netflix in the evening. Man, I just talked for so long. I hope that wasn't too much information.
I love it, Nick. No, this is good, man. I'm loving this. I mean, I've never had a guest. You're episode number 80, and I haven't had anybody take a deep dive into reading. And this is an important topic. So, man, let's keep it rolling. Now you got me curious. What is the reading process? I think you said we can get into that later, but you've got a recommended reading process. What is that for our listeners?
I think in order to be more intentional about the books you read, you need to start by doing a little bit of a self-assessment. Not just picking up a book because your friend recommended it or you saw it on Instagram, but do a little self-assessment. Like, what problems are you facing on a daily basis that you just can't get rid of? And to exaggerate this a little bit, I heard Jordan Peterson once say that if you're dealing with a problem on a daily basis, right, happens 365 times a year, over the next 30 years, you're going to experience that problem about 11,000 times. Or you could read a great book about how somebody else figured out a solution to that problem. You read the book with the intention of finding the solution, you apply it to your life, and you remove the pain, right? Create a little bit more pleasure, live a little bit of a better life. And so solve problems or build skills. Where do you want to be in 5 years and what's holding you back? What's the difference between Nick right now and Nick 5 years from now? What skill gaps are there? And go read a book about building that skill and becoming that person. So do a little self-assessment. Start by having a stronger emotional connection to the information that you're reading. Then go out there and find a great book. Find a book about that solves that problem or builds that skill. And love them or hate them, I think the best place to go is the place with the most data. And Amazon has the most data. So go to Amazon and just type the problem you're trying to solve, books that solve this problem or books that build this skill. And then I recommend filtering the results or sorting the results by the most reviews. I'll tell you what, I've worked in book marketing for a number of years now. It is hard to promote and market a book. And so if a book has thousands and thousands and thousands of reviews, It's because it has stood the test of time. It's changing somebody's life, and that word of mouth momentum is continuing to build. So look for the books that have a ton of reviews and then jump into the reviews. Read them, see what people have to say. My little key here is to toss out the 1 and 2 star reviews and also to toss out the 5-star reviews, because those are typically written from a place of emotion. They're written by friends or enemies. And so you want to toss those aside. You want to read the 3 and 4-star reviews. That's where the magic happens. That's where you see somebody write, here was my expectation. Here's what was delivered. Here's what I think was missing. Or maybe the author was trying to sell me into their course. Like, you'll discover that stuff in the 3 and 4-star reviews. And then when you get this book, and I'll kind of like pause after I share this next part of the process, but when you get the book, here's the number one tip I have. Set a SMART goal for every single book that you read. SMART is a goal setting acronym that's typically used in business. It stands for specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, meaning you're emotionally connected to it, and T stands for time bound. So what I love to do is I love to set a SMART goal for every single book that I read, and then I write it on the inside cover of the book. So if I was to take your recommendation on the branding book, I'd say, okay, this is a book on branding. And Alan recommended it to me. It's got really simple branding messages. Well, I don't want to overwhelm myself, so let me set a SMART goal. Find and implement at least one new piece of branding advice into my personal brand, Nick Hutchison, by the end of April. That is specific. I know exactly what my goal is. It's measurable. By the end of the reading experience, did I implement at least one new piece of branding advice into my personal brand? Is it attainable? Of course it is. I didn't say like redefine my entire personal brand. I just said implement one piece of advice. Am I emotionally connected to it? Of course I am. Nick Hutchison, like that's literally me. It matters more than just about anything, right? Except my faith and my wife. So like, yeah, it matters a lot. And then time bound, the end of April. I give myself a deadline to take action, because Parkinson's law states that the amount of time we give to a task, it will expand to fill that time frame. So if we don't ever say, I need to take action on this book by the end of April, you'll never take action on the book. And so the last part is that I will take that SMART goal and I'll write it on the inside cover of the book, and I'll review it every single time I read another chapter. I share my goal with the book so that the book can share just the information that I should take action on back with me. And that's the only information that I'll highlight as I'm going through the reading experience these days. I just want to look for the actions that I might want to implement. And so that's the first half of my process, man. But like, I know I just threw a lot at you again. So was any of that new? Is that similar to your process? Like, what do you think?
It's phenomenal. I've got it. No, I think it's great. It's not at all a part of my process, other than I have the objective to make sure. I think you kind of mentioned this earlier in our conversation, but I'm not just reading for the sake of reading or learning for the sake of learning. And that's why I'm more of a student of a book. I don't want to get done with a book and a week later, a year later, let alone a week later, go, what have I applied out of it? What am I even trying to apply? Have no SMART goals, nothing. There's nothing. And so it's like, subconsciously, did I gain value from it? Sure, maybe. I don't know. Who knows? So I'm with you on that, and the importance of implementation of what I'm learning. But no, I've never, ever done it the way you're describing, let alone written it inside the cover. I love it so much. I guess a question on that, though, is sometimes I don't know what exactly I might get to the end of a book and realize, okay, if I was going to set a SMART goal of what I'm going to implement out of this, what I learned here today, this is what it's going to be. That might be different than my perception of the book before I started it. I don't know. So I guess, or maybe not, it could be the same. My question for you is, when do you set that goal? It sounds like you set that goal before you start reading. And if you do, based on what? How are you basing that on a book you haven't read yet, if that makes sense?
I try to set my intention for the book before I even decide on a book, right? So like now, with my business, BookThinkers, I am looking to grow it dramatically in terms of revenue this year. And so what's a great book for that? What's hot out there right now? Well, 10X is easier than 2X.
Right.
By Dan Sullivan and Dr. Benjamin Hardy solves that problem of growing your business, right? So I'm like defining the problem before I pick the book. If there's a book that I'd like to read, or just I feel called to read it, or whatever the case is, like, yeah, read the front cover, read the back cover, maybe read the table of contents, read the introduction, get a good feel for the book, and then set that SMART goal. And I think it's important to set that SMART goal before you start reading the book, because it helps you filter for those potential actions to take. So let's say I'm reading this branding book that you mentioned before. Can you remind me of the title?
You Are the Brand.
Okay, You Are the Brand. I set that SMART goal. Find and implement at least one new piece of branding advice into my personal brand, Nick Hutchison, by the end of April. And I'm reading that every time I go through another chapter. And I go, oh, here's a new piece of branding advice. Here's a new piece of branding advice. And I'm just highlighting those potential actions that I should take. Now, don't implement immediately, because the action on the next page could be 10 times as effective and 10 times less expensive to implement than the one on the previous page, right? So I try to go through the entire book before I choose what to implement. And then if I've got a lot of options, I'll write them all down on a yellow legal pad. I'll write them down physically, all of those potential actions. And I'll say, which action out of this list, or maybe which 2 or 3 actions out of this list, are going to create the change I'm looking for? Because not every action is created equal. Some have more leverage, like I mentioned. Some can create more of an impact. Some you might be more emotionally connected to, so you're more likely to take action on. Some might be less expensive. Do a quick 80-20 analysis. What 20% of these potential actions can create 80% of the change? And then I will choose what to take action on. And I think that by filtering for just the information to solve your problem, you're less likely to get excited by those other things that are miscellaneous and not related. It's like when people go to these personal development conferences and they don't have an intention and they're not filtering for anything specific, 10 speakers come up and they're all talking on 10 different subjects, and you take notes on all of them equally. And it's like, okay, that's a recipe for your notebook going back on the shelf and you never taking action on anything, right? You've got to filter for just the most important information to solve your problem or build your skill, That's how I think about it.
I love it, Nick. So valuable. This is solid gold for all of our listeners that really want to gain some measurable skills, solving a problem, learning a new skill, like you said. I mean, those are the 2 reasons I read books. It's not for entertainment. It's why I don't listen to music. I mean, rarely. I shouldn't say rare. I mean, I did a quick 2-mile run the other day before a Zoom presentation I did. I plugged in my earbuds and wanted to listen to music, but I don't even remember the last time I listened to music. Probably months ago. So I don't know. Maybe I'm weird, but I always want to be growing and learning and
Well, I
fixing
like
problems.
weird people, Alan. So you're right there with me.
Oh, so I got some other questions I can't wait to jump into here before we run out of time. But I'm dying now to hear the other half of your advice. You said that's the first half of the reading process. We can't leave our listeners hanging. So what is the second half?
Well, and I'll share with everybody that I do a much deeper dive on everything I just shared and everything I'm about to share in my book, Rise of the Reader. It details my entire strategy. So a couple of other major points. Now you've done your 80-20 analysis and you know those 1 or 2 things that you'd like to implement from the book that you just read, right? They're going to solve your problem. They're going to help you build that skill and get closer to your potential self. What do you do with the information? Well, number 1, it needs to be documented somewhere. So I actually built out an activity tracker. It sounds like a lot. This is where I lose people sometimes. But as the legendary management guru Peter Drucker reminds us, what's not being measured can't be managed.
Yeah.
Once you start measuring something, you can make improvements. So I built out this activity tracking system where you can slot the activity that you're going to implement or try out throughout the week. You can set a goal for the number of times you're going to engage that activity. And then it measures the entire process for you. You have a completion percentage. You can build up streaks over a number of weeks. You can categorize into different groups. And that activity tracker is really important for me because I need to then take that information and set my own SMART goal with it. Like, let's say part of the branding advice was to create a branding mission statement, and he has a structure for it. Well, my goal that I put into my tracker might say, build a branding mission statement and share it on LinkedIn for feedback. That's my action. I'm going to put it in my activity tracker. So that's like one part of the equation. And in my book, Rise of the Reader, I have access to that activity tracker for free so that people can try it out. And I have a whole big description.
That's a digital tracker?
It is.
Like an app?
Yeah, it's a digital tracker that I actually made in Google Sheets, so everybody
Okay.
can just
Yep.
duplicate my template and customize it for themselves.
Perfect. Perfect.
Yeah.
Love it.
And the other half of this implementation thing that I've built is I actually recommend that everybody starts their own accountability group with their most motivated friends. I think that personal development can be a lonely sport if you play it solo, but it's actually meant to be a team sport. There are people in your network who want to be healthier. They want to be wealthier. They want to start a business. They want to have better relationships. They want to be happier. They want to be more mindful. And so, if you could meet with these people on a weekly basis and share the unique things that you've found in the books that you've read, in the conferences you've attended, in the podcasts you've listened to with your group on a weekly basis, and ask them to hold you accountable to taking action on that piece of branding advice, they might say, okay, on next week's call, you've got to show up and share that branding statement with us for feedback. And so I teach everybody in my book how to build this weekly accountability group with their most motivated friends. And I have a whole structure for how it should be positioned. And so, how do you implement information effectively? You measure it, you document it, you set goals around it, and then you share it with other people and they hold you accountable. And it just creates this beautiful kind of cyclical process where information doesn't get lost. It doesn't stay in the book. It doesn't stay in your brain, but it actually manifests itself in reality. And that's where the magic happens, man. Napoleon Hill has a great quote where he says, action is the real measure of intelligence. And that's what I try to optimize for, taking action. And those are the two best ways to make it happen, I think.
I love it, man. This is awesome, Nick. Thank you so much for all the golden nuggets you're dropping. Makes me want to get your book. I'm sure our listeners are feeling the same way. Before we wrap this up here, and we're not ready to wrap it up yet, but I can't wait to have you share how we can get a hold of that book in just a moment. But what would you say? You've had a ton of success. I mean, you just said you're 30 years old. You've read, 500 to 1,000 books in the last 10 years. You've got a platform that's reaching 1 million people a month. Doing some amazing things. What would you say has been one of the keys to your success that, speaking of learning from other successful people, that our listeners can learn from?
Well, like you mentioned, I've had the chance to interview so many of my heroes, so many amazing people, a few billionaires, a lot of millionaires, world changers. And I definitely have recognized some things that I view as success. Here's my definition, my working definition today. Somebody who is successful is somebody who enjoys the passage of time. They are healthy, they are wealthy, and they are happy. They have amazing relationships. It's a holistic sense of success. And again, I think it's that definition, enjoying the passage of time. That's what I optimize for. I want to do more of what I enjoy and less of what I don't enjoy. I want to feel amazing and have energy. I want to create a positive impact on anybody I come in contact with. And all of that adds up to enjoying my time. If I wasn't making a positive impact, I wouldn't enjoy my time. If I wasn't healthy, I wouldn't enjoy my time. If I wasn't financially stable and successful, I wouldn't enjoy my time. If I didn't have amazing, healthy relationships with all the people around me, I wouldn't enjoy my time. If I wasn't happy, meditating, practicing all of these different forms of mindfulness, spirituality, I wouldn't enjoy my time. So it's kind of a holistic definition. But I'll tell you this, I've met a lot of very, very rich people who are unhealthy and have terrible relationships, and they are not successful because
Right.
they don't enjoy their time. They're just rich. I've
Yes.
met a lot of very healthy people who have terrible business acumen, terrible relationships. Again, your body is a temple, but it shouldn't be a temple at the expense of literally everything else in your life. So those people, they don't enjoy the passage of time. And I've met a lot of people who have great relationships, and I'll give them credit. I think that's probably the most important pillar, to be
Right.
spiritual, to be mindful, to have amazing relationships. But if you're dirt poor living out of a cardboard box, right? And you're not healthy, like you're not enjoying your time as much as you could be if it was checking all those boxes, man. So
Right.
that's when I look at my calendar and when I look at my year and I set goals, I'm like, how do I make sure that I'm enjoying my time? And that's kind of how I view success.
I love that. I love that, Nick. And I love too that you put in there that, making a positive impact. Because to me, I think, and I agree with it, you're the one that said it, but I just want to highlight that too. And I agree, relationships are the most important as well. But I mean, if we check all those boxes for me, and it sounds like for you, if I check all those boxes of great relationships, spiritually healthy, financially healthy, physically healthy. But like, what am I doing with my time? Like, what if I'm not making an impact in my home and in my family and in my marriage and in my children and in the community and in my work that I'm doing? Like, for me, there's something greatly lacking. And I love that impact piece too, that you added it in there because we're in alignment on that. It's huge, huge to me. It's why I change careers and why, I do what I do. And I'm sure why you do what you do.
It is. Yeah. I had a hard time defining my purpose until I read a book called Built to Serve by Evan Carmichael. Evan is one of my greatest mentors. I owe so much of the lifestyle that I have today and the people that I help. Like I owe it to Evan because that book, he helps you define your purpose. And my purpose is to help other people get connected to the resources that they can use to improve their lives and achieve their potential. And it's like I know now that if I've made a positive impact on the people around me, that I'll fall asleep easy that night. Or if I've made progress in my own life, in my health, my wealth, my happiness, so it's kind of like this double sided coin of progress is fulfilling to me. Taking action is fulfilling to me, whether I've done it myself or I've helped other people do it themselves. And like, there's nothing better than hearing from somebody in my community that's like, hey, Nick, I have this problem. Do you know of a good book that could help me solve it? Yes, I do. Here you go. 3 months later, hey, Nick, I read the book. I implemented the solution. It worked. I don't experience that problem anymore. It's like, that's why I'm here. You know what I mean? I love
Yeah,
it.
I love it too. Has it always been easy? Have you ever had any challenges on this road to success and enjoying the passage of time?
Well, like you say, my friend, life is hard.
It is true.
I've had tons and tons and tons of challenges along the way. I mean, the first one that comes to mind is when I first started this business, BookThinkers. I started it with a couple of friends. And we envisioned building this mobile application that could help readers retain and implement more from the books they're reading. And we were just kind of like blissfully ignorant college kids. So we spent tens of thousands of dollars of our own money and hundreds of hours of our time outsourcing the build of this app. And it totally failed. Number one, it didn't have any product market fit. Number two, it didn't work. Number three, the company that was building it for us went out of business. And I really wanted to give up at that point. And it's not nearly as hard as a lot of the things that you shared with me before you pressed record that you went through in your life that triggered starting this podcast. But like, I think a lot of the people that I serve, they give up 3 feet from gold, right?
Yeah.
In business. And I've learned that success and failure in business are the same road usually. It's just that people give up too soon. They just need to dodge a few more obstacles and persist a little bit longer and develop a little bit more grit and resilience, and they'll find success building a business out of what they love. And so I just that was the first example that came to mind was a business failure. And I've had so many more since then. But when you're connected to a purpose and you just keep going and you find a way to provide value and give back, like it will work out eventually.
That's so good. Yeah, I started a group coaching program beginning of the month. It was just a 4-week program, and we started with 131 registered. And on week one, we had 113 show up. On week two, we had 87 show up. Last night was week three. We had 58 show up. And and I couldn't help but just talk about grit and staying in there and getting back up when you get knocked down, going through challenges and bouncing back up and continuing on. And I couldn't help but sharing with them there's very good reason why it's a very small percentage of people that are at the top of any industry because very few people do the work consistent enough, long enough to learn what they need to learn, to grow where they need to grow, to have the success they desire. It's just there's many starters and few finishers. So I love that you're obviously one of them, having challenges, bouncing back up, and here a few years later, just crushing it on so many levels. Nick, you're an inspiration, brother.
Well, I appreciate it. And same goes to you. I'm excited to learn a little bit more about your journey and also buy a copy of your book. And it sounds like you have demonstrated what all of those words truly mean in a bigger way, in a more powerful way. And so, yeah, I'm excited to learn from you too, man.
I appreciate that. Hey, how do you view like past challenges now before we jump off of that topic? Like when you look back in hindsight?
I love Ryan Holiday's work where he says the obstacle is the way. I think that when you're presented with challenges, you have an opportunity to grow and learn and collect feedback and improve yourself and become bulletproof. Nowadays, I expect failure. It's part of the process. Michael Gerber says in his book, The E-Myth Revisited, that 95% of small businesses fail in the first 5 years. So failure is part of the process. Failure is more common than success in the world of business and in life, I suppose. And so when you expect it, it doesn't surprise you much. It doesn't knock you off course as much as it would if you thought, you know what, I'm going to be successful and there will be no challenges. So not only do I embrace the challenges and I look to learn from them, but I expect them to happen. And so they don't surprise me. They don't shock me. And I just think that if you want to build a big, powerful business, you're going to have big, powerful obstacles to overcome in the way, you know?
Totally. Was it Mike Tyson that said everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face?
Yeah, yes.
I mean, it's one thing to, yeah, I think that's so good what you said. It's just life is just so much better when you realize not that you go through it negatively or pessimistic. That's not at all. It's actually for me, it's a much more positive perspective to know I'm going to get punched. Life is going to punch me. I'm only 51, 52 almost. It's like I've got another, hopefully 68 years to go. There's going to be some more punches. It's not going to shock me. It's not going to surprise me. It's a game changer, isn't it?
It really is. And I love that aim towards 120 if I did my back of the
Yeah, you
napkin math
did.
the right way. I'm
Why not?
also, I know you're fit. I'm very into biohacking and the whole quantified self and longevity world. Um, we've interviewed a number of people in that space like Peter Diamandis and Dr. David Sinclair and like all of these amazing humans. Um, but you're totally right. Like everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. And one thing that I've learned by studying Stoicism, which is one of my favorite philosophies, is that this concept of amor fati, which translates to a love of one's fate, you can actually view anything negative as neutral or maybe even positive. And that's kind of how I try to view all of these obstacles. They're learning opportunities. They're not negative, they're actually positive. Like if it's not in your control, or maybe even if it is, it's there for a reason. Like you're being put to the test. And only people that get put to the test realize their full potential. If everything just fell on your lap, I mean, that's not fulfilling. Who's more likely to cut themselves as a Boy Scout? The Boy Scout that's just given the knife, or the Boy Scout that's taught everything about the knife and has to carve the little bar of soap into a bear and learn how to use it and protect it and clean it? And it's like, no, that person is less likely to get cut. So I just think, yeah, you're supposed to be put to the test, and it's beautiful. And if you're not being put to the test, you're probably not taking on enough risk in your life.
Right. That's my philosophy. I love that, Nick. Hey, just some like quick 30-second kind of quick questions and answers as we, kind of start to wrap this up. Do you have a favorite success quote? I mean, you're quoting stuff from books like you've read 500 or more over the last 10 years, man. This is awesome. Do you have a favorite success quote?
I will be brief, but I do have endless favorite quotes. Well, I guess favorite is a singular term, right? I have a tattoo on my right wrist that says reality is negotiable. And it's a quote from The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss. And it's meaningful to me because it reminds me that I am in control. I am capable of building my dream life, and it's my responsibility to do that. And society can be pretty persistent and get you to conform to like the standard 9 to 5 and do a job that you hate and get in a bunch of debt. But like this quote reminds me that I can live this alternative lifestyle, build a business that uniquely makes me happy and positively impact the world. And so that's the quote: reality is negotiable.
Reality is negotiable. I don't remember that from that book, but it's been a long time since I read that book. And I love that. I love that. What would you say is one habit, Nick, that you do or have done daily, maybe, I guess ideally daily, that has really made a big impact in your life or your success or any aspect of your life?
I am one of those people that has a very long, very technical morning routine, but my favorite part of it is the 1 hour walk I start with every morning with my dog out in the woods. We go for a 1 hour walk. I get that sunshine before I consume any caffeine. I get the exercise endorphins flowing a little bit. I get a little bit of sun on my face and I breathe in the fresh air and I don't listen to anything actually while I'm out there. So it's sort of a form of walking meditation. I think about my day. I think about what I'm grateful for. I pray and everything in between. So that's my favorite part of the routine.
Wow. And that you said that's an hour long walk.
It is, yeah, 45 minutes to an hour.
Okay. I love it. I love it. What time is that? Are you early morning guy, late morning guy, night owl? What's your schedule like?
I'm a mid-morning guy, so wake up at 6:45 and I'm in the woods by 7 a.m.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, you're in the ballpark of my schedule. I like that. I like that. What is one of the best pieces of advice someone's ever given you, Nick?
This one isn't sexy, but the best piece of advice is that slow and steady wins the race. No matter how many times you read Aesop's fable, The Tortoise and the Hare, the tortoise wins every single time. And I use that in business a lot, but The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy is one of my favorite books. And it just says that if you show up on a daily basis and you make small little 1% changes or 1% steps in the right direction, eventually it's all going to work out. And so slow and steady wins the race.
I love it. Compound Effect is one of my favorite books of all time. It's on my top 5 list.
Me too.
For sure.
Me too. I've read that book probably 10 times. I can't get enough of it.
Same here. It was actually the third book rattling in my mind because I read it last year again for, I don't know, probably the fourth time. Speaking of books, what is one book, and we'll get to your book here in a minute, but what is one book that you'd recommend for the Life's Hard, Succeed Anyway audience?
I recommend The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. I just went through that book again. I try to kick off every year by reading that book. And it essentially states that if you state your intentions to the universe will conspire to assist you. And I think a modern day alchemist is somebody who can take life's hard situations and translate them into a successful life anyway. And the traditional alchemist takes whatever metal and turns it into gold. And I think that a modern day personal development alchemist is somebody who takes a hard situation, finds a golden nugget in it, and uses it to build a successful life. And I love that book so much.
Okay, I love that. Now, and I'm going to flip the same question back to you. We'll take it one step further. Your favorite book that you read from last year? The question you started off asking me.
I did read about 100 books last year, and my favorite was Be Useful by Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Okay, haven't read that one.
Arnold has the highest dream to reality ratio out of anybody I've ever seen. I mean, he grew up in rural Austria in a house that had no running water. And then he goes on to become a bodybuilding champion, a successful business person, a movie star making 10 million a movie, even though you can barely understand a word coming out of his mouth. Then he goes on to become governor of what is one of the standalone largest economies in the world.
Yeah.
And then a personal development kind of success hero for people. And so that shows me that we all have the same potential. We can all build such an amazing and useful life. And Arnold in that book talks about the powers of visualization and usefulness. And again, action is my word, and Arnold takes action. And so I love that story so much.
That's awesome. I definitely want to check that book out as well. When you think about the future, Nick, what today is exciting you the most?
The present moment, man. I enjoy the passage of time. I try to get the most out of every single day. I am happy, I'm healthy, I'm wealthy, I have great relationships, and I make a positive impact on everybody that I can. And so what excites me the most, every day, these conversations, the books I'm reading, the people I'm interacting with. When I think about the future, I just envision more of what I'm doing today. Nothing too different, nothing too crazy. Years ago, I would have said, oh, I'm going to build this huge business and interview all these cool people, and I'm going to have this big house. And today, I'm I just want more of the same, I love this present moment, and I want to make sure that I do everything I can to sustain it for as long as possible.
Love that. I love that. What is the best way for our listeners to connect with you, Nick, and follow along on your continued journey and get your book?
Yes, and get my book. Well, here's my favorite way to interact with people. If anybody listened to this conversation today and you're inspired to start reading, but you don't know where to start, DM me, direct message me on Instagram at BookThinkers. Maybe you can link that below. It's spelled just like it sounds, BookThinkers.
We'll link it below.
And tell me about a problem that you're facing. in as much detail as you can, or tell me about a skill that you'd like to build, or maybe an area of life that you're curious to learn more about. And I will provide a custom book recommendation to every single person that DMs me. It's my favorite thing to do is to play like book matchmaker. And then from there on Instagram, there are links in our bio to my book and to everything else that you might need.
Perfect. Yeah. And we will include those links below in the show notes so make it easy for everyone to access that. Nick, this has been fun, man. I could go on and on and on, but I gotta, we both got things to do, people to see, lives to impact. And so I'm going to let you go, but I'm not going to let you go without letting you have the last word. Anything you want to share on the way out with our audience?
I'll share this. Life does not have to be so hard because other people have figured out how to live successfully. And those resources, those stories, those life lessons are available in the form of a book for $20 or less in a few hours of your time. So do a little bit of research, pause and slow down. Go find a book that helps you solve that problem that you just can't get rid of. Whether it's dealing with grief, the loss of a loved one, if it's a health related issue, if it's a money or financial related issue, if it's a business related issue, if it's a mindset related issue, other people have figured it out. And you can get access to the world's smartest people in every discipline of life by reading and implementing their books. And I wish more people took advantage of it. But again, life doesn't have to be so hard. Other people have figured it out. And that's my final message today. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a great one to go out on, Nick. Thanks so much for your time today. This has been a blast.
Thank you.
If you love this podcast, grab some of Alan's free resources on his website at alanblain.com, spelled ALLANBLAIN.com. You can also find links to Alan's Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok there in his contacts page. Lastly, if you can leave a 5-star review for us on your favorite podcast app, that will get these messages out to more people and it will really mean the world to us. Thanks in advance and make it a great day.